Jack, how's it going? See, now I have the technologies. I can actually monitor my live stream without having to go behind the camera/phone. And I can see y'all's comments and everything like that. So it's pretty advanced for around here. AJ, what kind of spear? A pointy one. Sharp and pointy. I'm trying to get the full range of view in here. You can't really see the forge. Maybe I should turn this slightly. I don't want to take the power hammer out. Good enough. Pretty close. How's the audio? I've got my dead cat on the mic here, so happy Friday, Chris. Good evening, sir. Red Stag 300 Winchester short mag. Let the forge heat up here. I just got out to the shop, so, well, that's not true. I just started, let me rephrase that. I haven't started forging anything at all, including not even starting to forge. Had to get some water for the quench tank. That has been evaporating over the last however long. I haven't been doing a lot of forging lately. It's been hot, you know what? And it's still not very cool, actually. It is October, but it's pretty warm right now. The mornings have been nice, cooling down at night. Hey, Benjamin. A member. Benjamin Brewer, a member for 9 months. He's got the green bar of power on his comments. That could be you too. We're doing all right. We are plugging away. Jesus. So actually, yes, I am forging a Zulu style spear, the Ikwa, or however you say that. This is actually a custom order that I've been needing to get to for quite some time. We are finally doing this and bringing you guys along. If we get to it, we might forge some other stuff too. We'll see. But let's get the forge warmed up here, and I'm gonna grease up the old Little Giant here, and yeah, get her going. Hope everybody had a good week. It is now officially start of the weekend, eh? Primarily chainsaw bar oil because it sticks around, you know. And that's kind of what you want, right? It's going to be a mono steel spear blade. You know, this one's going to be as close to the originals as possible. I may scooch the camera over just to here because we're going to be on the power hammer a little bit more at first. I think, anyway. Gotta get out my wide blade tongs here. See, that doesn't actually fit. This is for a 1/4 inch stock. And New Jersey Steel Baron, being the fine folks that they are, actually give you more steel than what you actually are paying for, at least what's advertised. So this is 1/4 inch stock, but it's actually thicker than 1/4 inch, so the tong slots don't actually fit it until you forge it down. How's that? A little better lighting? I don't know. I am going to gonna see if I can actually make sure that all of the chat is actually showing up here. Yeah, see, top messages. How about all messages? I don't know. Do I need to pull this in a little bit? I don't know. We'll see. Yes, I've got the fan running. Yes, it's warm in here. October 17th. That is Texas. Well, I waited until the evening, late afternoon, to run this live stream. So hopefully more people can participate. That is my hope, anyway. All right, so we're heating this up. 2 inches by oversized 1/4 inch. We need a 12-inch long blade. We need a tang that goes into a haft. And of course, it's only about this long, the handle with a bell sort of on the end. I've got to go by my semi-local hardware or hardwood supplier and get some, 2 by 2 inch chunk of wood and something good for this project about that long, because I'm gonna have to turn it down on the wood lathe and leave a nice bell or whatever swell at the end like they have, and the old shovel handle option just doesn't leave quite enough material to actually provide that. It makes an okay handle, but it's not going to be quite right. So we have to. I've got to make one from completely from scratch. So I got to hunt that down. I'm trying to move my fan to where it doesn't turn itself. Not having much luck with that. Stay. So this is 80 CRV2. We'll just start by forging some shoulders in and start to forge the tang out here. That's what we're gonna do. And I feel like I need to adjust the camera slightly to where it's a little better view of what's going on. So I'll probably do that a little bit throughout the project if necessary. Having a press or a power hammer definitely makes this easier, but you can do it by hand. I've done it. Everybody's done it. But if you get yourself some kind of a guillotine tool that you can stick in the hardy hole of your anvil, and it's got two equal dies, that helps. How's everybody's week? What's going on out there in YouTube land? Well, you guys aren't YouTube land, you're in real life, and then, you know, the old platform. Do I need to talk louder or quieter, or is there any kind of white noise or background noise with this setup right now? Sweet. That's good. Just find microphone set up here. I think I need to pull a little more for the tang. I'd rather have a little extra than not quite enough, obviously. But now I have to be careful I don't create a cold shut in this area. And if I do, then I have to grind it out before I continue forging much, or it's gonna just get longer and you end up with essentially a crack in your steel. You know, I kind of feel like I should be running two things at a time here because I'm waiting for this to heat up. And then as soon as you do that, you spend a little extra time on something, and then you've left the other piece in the forge too long. That's what can happen when you're doing more like a one-off custom project or something like that. When you're doing something that you've done a bunch of that are very similar, you know the process of what it's going to be. You kind of rotate them through, and you're doing a certain process on each of it, and that can work pretty well to have a couple or even maybe potentially 3 items in the forge, but you've got to be able to cycle through those fast, quickly, so they're not sitting in there just cooking, you know. That's not good. Yeah, I'm gonna grind on that a little bit. I forgot to oil the clutch on this actually. Okay. Yeah, I'm just going to hit this with the grinder real fast. A little bit. Nothing too crazy. Yeah, I have been waiting for it to cool down a bit before I really start getting back in the forging a bunch. The other part of it is I have just been working on building knives, trying to get some, trying to get ahead a little bit, maybe even get a little bit of inventory built up. But I have a bunch of forging stuff that I need to do, and so this week I put out a batch of everyday carry bowl cutters, a little compact bowl cutter knife, and then next week it's going to be, what do I have over there? I've got some lock saws, I've got a couple of one-off EDC knives, kind of cool stuff, and then the week after that it's going to be a new model drop point blade, almost like a bird and trout and bird knife, whatever. So that's coming. Those are in the pipeline. And then after that, I have a model that I'm pretty excited about that I've been working on for a couple months now. And like I mentioned in a live stream previously, some of these recurring models that are going to be regulars, I have started having the steel water jetted out so that I don't spend as much time in abrasives just grinding out a profile. And then I take that raw steel in that shape and do everything to it, build a knife from that. And it costs more, obviously, but you know, time savings and stuff like that, is trying to figure out how to bump up my production numbers, just me in the shop hand making every single knife. That's one way to kind of help with that. Anyway, but this new model is it's on. I've got some blanks on the way, and it is a classic. I think I've even showed it before on the live stream. A classic drop point design that I designed, but it's just a classic design. It's not like a groundbreaking, different design, but it is my own that I drew out, created, and. Overton? Okay, I'll try that. Anyway, I'm excited about this. It's just a super classic. In fact, that's what I'm calling it, is the classic. And well, that feels weird, but if it helps, maybe it's better. Anyway, so that's coming, and amongst all of these, so to sum up what I'm saying here, before I ramble too much, the goal is to continue a steady stream of knives, but then there's some special projects also. And so I've just been working on kind of establishing a routine with the knives and trying to get some momentum or traction with that. And I feel like I am. And now I have to start folding in the some of these other special projects, which I can't tell you about some of them, but they will be forthcoming. How's the old there's a difference. Is it a good difference or is it a bad difference? Probably getting some decent fall weather up there, Overton. We don't get that down here. We get, well, okay, I shouldn't say that. This is, from here till January, the best time of the year in this part of the country. But it's not cold during the day, which, you know, that is what it is. It cools off at night. But sunshine, normal temperatures. I do love this time of year. It's just not, you know, mountain fall time. All right, I've got to make some decisions about how wide I'm going to leave that tang. I do want to leave it plenty thick like that. I like that. Do I need to pull off even a little more material? I may. I don't know. I don't think so, actually. Where's my steel ruler at? This is almost 3.5 right now, and I think I can get it to 4 inches pretty easily, and that should be sufficient. I don't know, we'll see. We shall see. Fit at 2 degrees. That's nice. '63 in Michigan. That's nice. Well, if something obscures my vision, and you know, I was waving, I was slapping a bug, and I see this is the hazard right here, man. That's what happens. You see that fly? Then I just do that. There, I don't even have to make anything up with that. Not good. Okay. And then the overall, the whole blade length here has to be 12 inches. You know, folks, I hope I have enough material here. Okay, I think we do. So that's a 4-inch tang right now. I can narrow it down a little bit more, which I'm going to do right now, and get it closer to 4.5 plus. But that should be sufficient. Side of the hat. Okay. Well, it doesn't want to stay on there very good, I can tell you that. We'll try it. We'll see what happens. 73 in central Illinois. You're a flint napper now. Does that have anything to do with the temperature? 81 in Kansas City. Is that Kansas City, Missouri? Yeah, we're probably like 85 right now. I don't even know. All right, let's taper this tang down a bit. Oh, I have to use my hand hammer to straighten that out a little bit. Okay, see, I see a little bit of a cold shot. I did not get that out all the way. That's not good. That is no bueno. Hold on. Now I've got to find a pair of pliers to hold on to this with while I grind a little bit off of there. Yeah, that's what I was afraid of, but I did not quite get that cold shut off of there. Cannot have that. I think it's pretty shallow though. Yeah, I got most of it the first time, so it was pretty shallow. So I'm gonna forge the thickness down just a hair, get it down to the 1/4 inch so that we don't have a thicker tang than the actual body of the blade. That wouldn't be very helpful. Mike makes his spears of stone. That sounds like a name of a movie or something. Spear of Stone. Missouri, 84 today. Yeah, that sounds about right. Oh, cold front. Yeah, well, we probably, our weather kind of comes from New Mexico more than it depends on the time of year. In the winter, it does come out of the plains, and it actually gets pretty cold here. Not Montana cold, but as cold as you could probably get this far south. But we're still in the path of the plains weather, coming down out of the Canadian prairie and whatnot. All right, I'm glad the audio is pretty okay. Get out of the way. This heart is in the way. Jeez. Edge of the jet stream. Yeah, but it's a little bit long though. Okay, we have a tang. No, not the sugary drink mix. The handle end of a blade, or the haft end of a blade. Tang. No, not the tropical fish. English is a great language. You have a word that means like 3 to 5 different things. And it may or may not be spelled different, but it sounds the same. You just have to know what you're talking about in the moment. And that's just a great language, right? I don't know how other languages compare to that, but whatever. Okay, we have a tang. I think that's going to be pretty good. You know what? What I'm going to do is I'm going to pin this tang, which is not the actual construction of a Zulu spear, but I can do that because I'm going to be wrapping the mounting area with rawhide, so I can hide a pin under there, and that way it'll never come out. But anyway, worst case scenario, I can forge that down a little bit more, but now we're going to move on to the actual blade, because this tang will definitely work as it is, and if it doesn't, we have multiple options. AJ, yeah, there's a lot of things I need to do for shop optimization, and that is on the list, but you know, that's life sometimes, or all the time. There's a couple of different things I'd like to do that would make life a little bit easier. I have done some of them, but you kind of weigh the need versus, building product or whatever. And if it's not like I don't know, there's things that you look at, okay, if I get to this point where if I build this jig or this thing or whatever, I can raise my efficiency and therefore production by a certain percentage, but it has to be enough to where you can justify that time, and then you do it, and then it's worth it, or it's not, and it's like, well, it doesn't really matter that much. But the die rack is one of those where the amount of time that it would take me, well, the cost of the iron, angle iron stuff, amount of time, sitting down, figuring out a good design, and then building the whole thing, it'd be like, 4 feet tall. It'd be great, I guess, but it's not been something that, it's not going to save me enough time and headache between where they're at right now, which is just sitting right here next to the press. It would put them like right here instead of right here, right? And so the amount of time and cost that I would take to build a die rack, or I could put them up here maybe, but the difference is not great enough in my mind, at least, to do that right now. I'm not bored enough and slow enough to justify it. Does that make sense? So that's why they're still on the floor. And then if you do it right, you can get in a hamstring stretch, because you got to get those in when you're standing around all day, especially when you're getting old. See, and that's a problem, AJ, is like quick and easy project. I'm going to overthink it and over design it and overbuild it, and it's going to be like at least half a day. And so that's part of the problem too. A whiteboard, yeah, that's a good idea. I had a whiteboard, and it's gone because it like warped up on me, and I need to put in a new one, but maybe on the other side of the shop where the heat isn't quite as bad. I'm not sure. Jackhammer. I'm not going to be done with this for a while. The power hammer. Sorry. Glad the audio's doing okay, Mike. All right, so we've got our tang forged on this spear. I don't need that whole thing hot, but what I do need is to forge over the tip. Look, we have a Bowie knife. I'm convinced that classic Bowie knife design was merely a result of simple and effective manufacturing processes. I'm convinced of that. Prove me wrong. Look at that. It's exactly what it is. They cut the stock off at an angle, forge it up. There's your clip point. I mean, this looks exactly like. That's what it is. I'm telling you. That's why that happened. I think, because if you stop and think about it, and then they developed. Here's my theory. And then they developed techniques like sharpening the clip so they could like do fancy stuff. But I think that's how that originated right there. Because you can see how long that took me to build that curve, the tip, like what, 3 or 4 hammer blows? There it is. And back before the Industrial Revolution, you got guys building these things, forging these things by hand, and efficiency, as always, is the name of the game. But the way that they achieve that, you know, you have to be really good at what you do, but you figure out ways to do what you do more efficiently, and you kind of mesh that with an acceptable product. And I'm saying acceptable product because, you know, we always think of old stuff as being better, and in a lot of ways it was, but there's plenty of times, especially like in the trade era of the Western expansion and pre-settlement era, where companies were building, you know, tomahawks, Bowie knives, whatever, for trade, primarily for trade, and they oftentimes were junk, but were still better even than what, you know, the Indians had or whatever. But it doesn't, just because they were made back then doesn't mean automatically that they were somehow superior, because they were not always that way. And anyway, that's my theory on the Bowie knife, how it actually got that way. AJ, this is not going to be, this is a custom order. I'm not planning on making these as a regular item. If I do, okay, let me back up. I have thought about a spear, but it's not going to be like the Zulu. It's going to be more of an actual hunting spear, or it would be, I should say. I haven't decided to do that. I have thought about design implications and stuff a little bit, and it would be longer and more of a boar hunting spear than anything else. But I wouldn't be building it this way probably. I'm not really sure. I really have not put a lot of thought into it. This is a custom order, and I don't plan to make any more in the near future. Mountie, how's it going? From Deutschland. Yeah, the old hog splitter. That was a neat project. Damascus. That was a while back. I think it was the well, it would have been the first or second year that we were in Texas, I think, if I remember correctly. Yeah, I've made one version of the Zulu spear before, but this one's going to be closer to the actual Zulu and less of an interpretation. It's going to be real close to the actual design. Follow up on my quiz. I forget. Overton, yeah, let me show you. So when you have a piece of stock, let's say you forge out a bar. Let me pull this out real fast so it doesn't just sit there and cook. You have a piece of stock like this. It could be however many inches or feet, doesn't really matter. Okay, let me back up even more. In the old days, before steel was what it is now, which is pretty high quality, depending on where you buy it and what you buy, very clean, again, depending on what you buy, where you buy it. But we have really, really good steel compared to what they had 250 years ago or whatever, 200 years ago, even turn of the century. Well, right before the turn of the century. And so in the old days, you'd have a lot more impurities and inclusions and things like that in your steel. And so in that instance, forging it did actually have greater benefit on the steel and the construction of whatever you were building than it actually does today. Forging is still fine and can be helpful in some cases, but back then it was actually more of a benefit than it is even today. And so, that being the case, you would want to utilize the longitudinal grain of the steel because of, like I said, the inclusions and a little bit of impurities and stuff. They would be drawn out in a lengthwise fashion, and that would make the steel stronger when it was perpendicular to this grain that was kind of created by all these microscopic, or maybe not so microscopic impurities or inclusions. That being the case, you wanted the edge of your knife blade to, rather than just be cut out of a piece of steel, which was also more wasteful, or could be, you wanted the edge of the knife to follow that grain. And so the way that you would do that, one way that you would do that, is you've got your steel, the grain of your steel, and so you cut out a piece like this, however many you want to, out of a bar of steel, and then if you did that repetitively, both ends would have an angle, and one end of that fits nicely into a particular handle design, and the other end is going to be the point of your knife. And so to get that longitudinal grain up the curve of your knife, you take this flat edge here with this angle and forge it this way, which is what I did a few minutes ago on the point of our spear. And when you do that, you end up naturally with a clip point, because this portion here curves up and you end up with a perfect clip point. So hopefully that explains, you're able to see it, because I did do it real quickly. I wasn't intending to make this a big thing, but that's how you end up with that clip point without even trying, because you've got the anvil here and you're forging this down, and this is the edge of your knife, and then you turn it over and you've got that clip point. So that's my theory as to why, one of the big reasons why, if not the reason why, the Bowie knives have that very distinct clip point. Because if you stop and think about it, it's not very practical. And then at some point they started sharpening the clip, and then you could use that for a secondary edge. But you know, when it comes to field dressing, skinning, you know, processing wood, anything else, it's really kind of pointless, pun intended, and it doesn't really help you very much. Even like the pre-Bowie Spanish knives and the long hunter knives, they just had a kind of a flat spine. They didn't have a clip point, and those were actually more practical. So that's my theory. I really think that is a big reason, if not the reason, why the Bowie knives have the old clip point design. And of course nowadays, if you don't have a clip point on it, it ain't a Bowie. Well, whatever. There were some Bowies that did not have clip points, but what do you mean, like why the Bowie knives have a clip point? That whole thing? I mean, I don't know if I could make an entire video out of it. Maybe I could. I have not, and I haven't studied this out. I'm sure there's somebody that's got a different theory, but just from building a lot of knives and seeing how really effortless you can make a clip point on a piece of steel like that as you're forging a blade, that's my theory, but I haven't studied it out. I mean, because like you saw here, so it actually forged that into like what would be more considered a drop point, and then we're doing a symmetrical double-edged blade here, obviously. That takes a lot more work. And so if you're trying to crank out knives, just knocking that point around and getting that curved point, point to the blade, that's quick and simple, you know. Yeah, it's an idea. We'll have to keep that in mind. So on our spear here, the next thing is to simply start drawing this down. Obviously, this is way too fat, and need a lot more of a taper. I'm gonna try to leave the width here as much as possible, because that's how the blade is on the Zulu spear. It's almost, you guys have probably seen them, but they're only about 36 inches long, and it's almost more of a sword, but, you know, with the blades, you know what I'm saying? It's almost used more like a sword than it is an actual spear. Kind of interesting. Well, it could be used as both, you know, but... A little closer. What kind of length do we have so far? Oh yeah, we'll have no problem getting to 12 inches on the blade itself. It's gonna be sweet. Yeah, I've got to go shopping for some 2-inch square, some kind of wood for the handle. Get back on the old wood lathe. Samdahl, how's it going? Who is also up in Montana. I would have to do a little more research and see if there wasn't a plausible explanation to the contrary before I floated that kind of a theory. But could be. Could be. All right, I'm gonna have to start growing my own coffee or something. Have you seen coffee prices lately? Out of control. Pretty sweet. Okay, so I am not going to forge bevels on this. And if that makes you sad, well, I'm not, okay, I didn't plan to, let me put it that way. I don't think I'm going to. But, the reason for that, well, we might do a little bit. We might forge a little bit of bevel on there. Might do a little bit of that. But this is ADCRV2, and I also like to leave plenty of extra material, because if you're familiar with that and you've watched any videos in the past, I've said this probably multiple times. ADCRV2 is by far the worst steel for decarb that I have ever used out of quite a number of different blade steels. Why that is, I don't exactly know. I'm sure it has something to do with the chemical composition and the alloy components, but that is the case. And so I never feel bad about leaving a little extra or a lot of extra material on an ADCRV2 blade. So dimensions being what they are right now, we've got 11 inches. I am going to forge it out to length a little bit, and then I will come back, I've decided just now, and forge a little bit of bevel just to get some extra width, because we have the material and I want to make sure that I have plenty of width to work with. As it stands right now, that's narrower than I want already, and so we're going to have to remedy that. So yeah, I guess disregard what I said a moment ago. We are now going to forge a bit of bevels, some bevelage there. All right. Overton's in Montana. Samdal, Crucible doesn't make 80CRV2. 80CRV2 comes out of Germany. Is it Udenholm? I'm not sure, but it's not a powder steel. So there shouldn't be any problem with availability with 80CRV2, but I actually don't use a lot of it anyway. I use it on some Damascus. It works great for that. And then on, stuff that I want to be really tough, because 80CRV2 is extremely tough. Doesn't have the best edge retention, so that's why you pair it appropriately with the tool that you're building. But also on that note, Samdal, somebody bought Crucible, bought them out, and so all their steels, more or less, I guess, are going to be available anyway. So, yeah, I don't. There would be some other reason that they don't have 80CRV2. And it could just be normal hiccups in the supply chain or demand or whatever. I don't know. Or it could be something more nefarious. I'm not sure. All right, as it stands now, it's all a 1/4 inch thick, pretty much. Real slight taper on the thickness. And we're a 1/2 inch away from the target length. And so, again, like I said, it's all 1/4 inch thick right now for the most part. And we do want more of a distal taper, so that's where we're gonna get the length at this point, rather than making it narrower. Just forge the thickness down some more. Yeah, I haven't bought any 80CRV2 in a while, so yeah, I'm not aware of any availability issues, but like I said, it comes out of Germany, and who knows what's going on over there, so for all I know, they could be having production problems with whatever they got going on. I have no idea. Don't know. But honestly, that's another advantage of 5200, which is what I use primarily, It is some of it's made in America, but it's a very widely available steel because it's used in industry so much. So that's an advantage to 52 and 100 also. Starting to look like a spear. Okay, I'm going to taper this down a little bit more. Get this slightly over length. And then we'll forge a bevel a little bit. You see how that puts it off to the side like that? That's because my dies are not exactly flat, and so it's forging more on one side, and not a big deal. You just flip it over, forge on the other side like you want to anyway. But that's the nature of, sometimes that's the nature of old equipment, old machinery. Honestly, it's not always bad anyway, because if you tried to forge a bevel on one side of a blade, and you start to figure out, where the dies are actually, how they forge, where they're actually contacting the material and so forth, and put that to use that to your advantage. Steel at equilibrium temp due to the weight strike of the hammer at the tip. No, I just kind of control the how hard the hammer hits. Like you can make it just tap, or you can. Or you can run it to where it's hitting as hard as possible. And that's a combination of the clutch. It's a friction clutch. It's a clutch up here in this deal. And then kind of just how you run the hammer. The ram comes down and hits, and the way it's kind of swings it down like that and hits it, you can kind of get a feel for that. But anyway, it's pretty controllable. All right, we're pretty close. I don't want to take this tip down too thin. I want to, and here's why. I want to have Going into heat treat, I want to have well, this is part of the problem with forging in bevels too much, right? You're going to have thin cross sections and thick cross sections, and that is where you start to run into problems during heat treating. Try to keep the thinner cross sections from overheating while you're trying to get the thicker cross sections up to heat. Now, in a kiln, an oven, that's not that big of a deal because it's got a consistent ambient temperature. But I'm gonna have to heat treat this in the forge because of the length. I'm pretty sure it's not gonna fit. I'll have to double check that. But I don't think it's gonna fit in my kiln. And so it's gonna be a forge heat treat, and definitely doable, but it's more difficult when you have wildly different cross-section dimensions. And so I don't really want to forge the thickness down too much more on this blade. Also, second reason for that is I want to leave the medial ridge. I want to have that be substantial enough, and so this is where I want to be. I don't want to forge the thickness down anymore for the two reasons I just mentioned: heat treat, uniformity of heat, and then being able to have a sufficient medial ridge or center line down there. So I'll just clean this up a little bit, and then we're going to forge in some bevels. Hey Randy, how's it going? Thanks for tuning in. So just a little cleanup on the hammer. And primarily what I'm concerned with, or not concerned, but going to focus on is down here. So I do want a little bit more width down there. Where's my other blade tongs? There they are. So I got something recently here. Without going into detail too much about future projects, but you know, you can make these too. This is a tomahawk drift, but again, it's that time versus time versus cost analysis, and I decided just to pick one up. All right, you guys sit tight. I'm gonna make a pit stop. I'll be back. Okay, I'm back. Why the accent, I don't know. Ransom, do you have the bell turned on? I don't know why you wouldn't get the notification. YouTube likes to mess with stuff, you know? I don't know. Sorry. I didn't do it. Okay. Get some bevels going. Randy, it's ADCRB2. My steel of choice for tough use blades and tools. Although I have had somebody break an 80 CRB2 blade before, but I probably should have left a thicker grind on it. But that's the only time that's ever happened to an 80 CRB2 blade. And this particular individual, well, if you know him, you wouldn't be super surprised. But anyway. The spine on a knife is, the thickness of the spine is one thing, but then the grind, if it's too thick, it doesn't cut well. So in general, my knives are on the thin grind side because I want them to do what knives do or should do, and that is to cut stuff. So anyway, so that's what we have going on here, and that's about as much forging it. I'm going to clean it up, obviously, but the thickness there, we're at, I would say 3/16 inch thick, and that's what I'm not going any thinner than that. But that, you know, clean that up and come in a little bit more. That should give me the kind of width on the blade that I'm looking for, and that'll be good. I can tell you what the starting dimensions of this piece of steel were. They were just like a 1/4 inch longer than this piece, and this is so I guess it would have been like 11 inches long at the long side, and this is 2 inches wide, 1/4 inch thick. It's oversized stock, but that's the dimensions approximately. So I guess I should say it's actually now I got to do imperial math in my brain here. It's a 32nd over a 1/4 inch. What is that? 5 32nds. No, that's not right. 5/16. No. Oh my gosh. Yeah, call it a day is right. No, this is, what do we have here? This is 16ths. Well, it's close to 1/4 inch. Anyway, that's what it is, okay? Yeah, that would be 5/16. I was right. I was right. One of those times. 9/32. Well, Yes. There you go, 9:30 seconds. Oh my gosh. Okay, see, I left this in here too long. That's not good. 9:30 seconds, yes, that's correct. It's more like what it is instead of 1/4 inch. Good grief. Good gravy. Anyway, the finished dimensions is a 12-inch spear blade plus the tang, which is like 4.5. So there you go. Turn this forge down a bit, eh? It's all up to temp. I don't need that much gas pressure on there. Hey, it's Yukon, eh? No, I'm hammering the steel. No, this is not a sax. This is just a pre-cut form. That way, we already talked about this. You missed it, but you can forge this up, and you've got a continuous grain of steel for your edge. And so, when you're cutting pieces out of a piece of stock, you just cut diagonal, and then one end works out pretty nice for a nice handle design, and then the other end is you forge it up for the tip. But this is just this is actually, anyway, is what it is. Heck yeah! Up there in the frozen north, old Yukon up there, eh? So my purpose here is to get some more width on the end of the blade here. That's what I'm concerned about. I'm not so concerned about having bevels forged in. We already talked about that, but so here's the thing too, is you got to be, this needs to be a nimble weapon, and if you leave too much material on there at the finished dimension, you're going to have a very tip heavy spear, and that's not going to be super great. Yeah. I'm doing a live stream. Hold on. Okay. I don't know, Yukon, what the spear is for. It's a custom order, and I didn't ask the fellow what he intended to use it for. It's probably going to be more of a last ditch weapon, you know, that you keep on display, and somebody comes in and starts doing bad things, you can yank it off the wall and take care of business. But that's just me thinking out loud. So, all right, so we got a little bit of bevel there. That is plenty of bevel. I think we've got I think this width is adequate too. Where's my steel ruler? There it is. What do we have here? It's 2 1/4. I think that's adequate. I hope it is. I'm pretty sure it is. I checked my specs for this project because I've made that mistake on more than one occasion where I didn't double check the specs because this was ordered a while ago and I don't remember, but I didn't see any kind of width specs on there, but I know in my mind what it's supposed to look like. So it should be fine. I think it's fine. Yeah, moose are big animals. They are big critters, and they will stomp you into the dirt or snow if they don't like you. That is why you want to have a tree nearby, or be really good at shooting with an adequate firearm, but that's kind of a risky proposition if they're charging towards you. Have not had to deal with that before, but came sort of close one time, I think, possibly, maybe not, but it felt like it. Well, there I go. I said I wasn't going to do bevels all the way up, but here I am. Doing bevels most of the way up. But it's kind of hard to stop once you've started, you know. That's just the way it goes. Keith, how's it going? I need a tad more heat on this. A little too low there. Thanks, Keith. Yeah, I think you just got a bushcraft, if I remember correctly. And the new bushcraft knives. Convex grind. So, one of the disadvantages to forging in the bevels is that you end up with a pretty, wobbly blade that you do have to go back and straighten quite a bit, but, that's the way it is. Oh yeah, I certainly would not want to hunt moose with a spear or anything less than a... Well, that's a good question, because I've read stories about people hunting moose and stuff, but if they're not charging you, that's an entirely different situation than... That's entirely different than when they're charging you, and you have to try to not die by knocking them down before they get to you. Assuming you can affect, decent shot placement when they don't know you're there. Yeah, no, Keith, it's been a while. I haven't done a live stream in a while, and I haven't done a lot of videos lately. But we're still here. We're still making the knives and doing the stuff. But yeah, long time no. All right, I think it's. I am concerned that I've maybe made it a bit too thin here now. Well, you know what? And this is part of the issue. I shouldn't say issue. This is part of the nature of the beast when it comes to custom orders. You don't know exactly how to build what it is you're building. And so it would not be unreasonable for me to completely do this over again. I hope, generally you hope that you have enough general experience to where you can map out a project effectively enough that you don't totally screw it up the first time. But that's not always the case. And so it would not be totally unreasonable for a maker, including myself, to look at this, what we've done here tonight, and say, okay, I have now learned how to make this particular item, and now I can make this particular item and then toss this on the workbench for a auxiliary project or whatever, and then go back and do it exactly the way that you need it to be done. I don't think that's going to happen here, but it has happened in the past, and frequently, well, somewhat frequently, that can be the nature of custom orders, which is one reason why custom orders can just cost more money for that reason right there, among others. The auction on LiveForge for Fire Creek, and we can bid as many things as I can make. That's an idea. I don't think a trident would be too bad, actually. I have not made one though. But I'm already thinking about how I would do that in my head. Probably can't see it, but I've got to knock this bevel kind of back to center because it's going off like this, and that is not good because when we go to grind the bevels in, it's going to be a problem. We need that to be on the center line. Hey, Duck Rabbit, how's it going? How goes it? Well, how big of a trident are we talking about here? This is going to be the tedious, fiddly part. Working on your truck. What kind of truck is it? What kind of truck is it? It's probably a K truck, huh? One of those little you know, one of those little Chinese deals, you know? No? Oh, it's an idiot Ranger, okay. Cool. Is that okay, I don't know my trucks very well. Is that when they were still the full-size truck? Instead of the little Ford Ranger? I'm trying not to just, you know, go crazy hammering on this because that's just going to lead to something else being not straight. So I'm trying to just coax it over and get the bevel lined up instead of off to the side. Come on. It looks like a spearhead anyway. It's kind of like it's really kind of like a short sword attached to the end of a haft. It's really what we have going on here with the Zulu design. And that's actually how it's kind of used, I guess, or was used, if I understand correctly. All right, that's a little better. Things are getting centered up, which is what we need. No, that's called truck abuse. You don't want to do that to a decent truck pickup. There's no reason for that. It's just disrespectful, man. Yeah, not too shabby. Gotta get it straightened up though. Nice and straight. This is how it's gonna go into the heat treat. And then the grinding will all be after full heat treatment. Like I said, this is probably going to be a forge heat treating job. Chet, this blade is going to be ground. It's going to have bevels. It's possible to, well, I'm not planning on leaving any forge finish on it actually, but this is just the forging process, and then the bevels have to be ground in the rest of the way. And you know, you could leave an unground center portion. I'm going to go back and look at the specs and everything like that. But my original plan, if I remember the goal correctly, is to grind into where there's a medial ridge on the blade. So you're not actually going to have any forge finish on here. I don't believe. At least that's the original goal. What kind of steel did the Zulus use? I don't know. Probably something of medium to low carbon and not that great. I don't really know what they had available, but I think in general, steel weapons or iron weapons of various designs on various continents became more prevalent post colonial colonization. You know, when the English or the Dutch or the Germans or whoever it was, Spaniards, the Portuguese, different European nations, they would bring some of these materials with them, and this is true for the American Indians as well. They would adopt these new materials into sometimes previously used designs, but I think sometimes these new materials gave birth to new designs that were not previously possible. But I don't know. I do not know the specific history of the Zulu spear, to be honest. But I think it became famous sometime after the colonial period, but I'm not sure. Okay, Everything looks pretty centered. I still have to get this actually straight though. El Caminos, I don't like the way they look personally. But that's just me. What I want to get is a, well, I'm not too picky. I pick up whatever was available within a certain range, but I wouldn't mind having, you know, just the old late 70s, early 80s Chevy. I mean, I had a Chevy. Kind of like Chevys. I like Fords too. I'm not a die-hard either way. But then you really kind of need to rebuild it, and I don't have time for that, you know? So let's be honest here. All right, well, I'm going to get this pretty straight, but honestly, I can finish straightening it after the annealing process. So I don't have to get, you know, super crazy on the straightening right now. I want it to be really close. I don't, because I don't want to have huge deformations or stuff like that, because once you start the heat treat process, if you're going to try to change things wildly after the heat treat process, you can end up with some stress. Like when you remove a lot of material or try to move material, a lot of material in a particular area, you've kind of set the steel up for where it's at initially. And if you try to change that a whole bunch after the heat treating processes and before hardening, you can run into problems. Yeah. So after this it's going to be normalized. We'll run a normalizing cycle on this, and then we'll anneal it, and then it'll be soft enough to finish straightening. But like I said, I don't want to do much straightening if at all possible. Looks pretty good. Tang's a little off. Fix that. Tang here. So as you can see, I'm working to keep the heats lower at the end of this forging process here. Really, you want to forge at a progressively or successively lower and lower heat, but at the very least, as you get towards the end of the forging process, you want to keep that heat reduced, and you're not moving much material. I'm not really moving material, I'm just straightening it up. And the reason for that, of course, is to affect that grain refinement. And if you forge it at the upper end of the heat range the whole time, you're not going to get that grain refinement benefit. And kind of defeats the purpose. Well, not entirely, but it defeats one of the purposes of forging, or at least one of the big things that people always talk about when it comes to forging. That is one of the reasons why a forged blade could be better in some cases than just a stock removal blade. That's not really true across the board based on the kind of steel and the condition that it comes in that we have these days. The quality and condition of the steel that we have today is very different in general than a couple hundred years ago. And so what can actually happen is that you can actually ruin the steel by forging it improperly, whereas you would have had a better blade just doing stock removal and doing a proper heat treat on it. And so just because it's forged does not necessarily mean it's a better blade. It all depends on who's forging it and if they know what they're doing or not. So that's just the facts, the reality of the situation. So anyway, this low red heat here, we are keeping the grain. Now, you gotta be careful too, because you can end up with carbide segregation and alloy banding if you keep doing this too much. Which is a whole nother issue. But it'll be nice fine grain. Which of course is another nice thing about 80 CRB too. It is built for nice fine grain, even at higher forging heats. The vanadium content helps contain the grain size. So it really is in that respect, a good choice for forging. But if you forge things properly, then you can get a good grain size with all sorts of steels. Okay, it's just not straightening out like I wanted to here. Come on now. Brain refinement. Yeah, that's hard now. Yeah, I have that book. I've read most of it. It is interesting. It is interesting. I like learning about steel. Well, we're closing in on this here. You know, in general, I found that when you're doing a live stream, it's not the quickest forging process because you're interacting and having a good time, and that's great. That's kind of what it's all about, right? When you're doing a live stream, obviously. But I don't know that I'm going to get to multiple items tonight. Not sure where we're at. Are we a couple hours in? Time has flown by. Now we're an hour and 47 minutes. That's almost a couple hours. That I'm not exactly doing a production level speed here on this spear, guys. Not at all. Definitely not like the old orcs there in Saruman's dungeons, turning out those those blades that were very obviously cut out of sheet steel that were supposedly forged. But you know, that's the problem. You can't watch movies that have anything to do with metal craft or forging when you actually do that stuff, because it totally ruins it for you, because they never get it right. Ever. Name one time that they actually got it right. I don't know of a single one. And you know, this is what, okay, how hard would it be for some mid-level producer or the top guys, whatever, to call up some professional blacksmith, let's just say professional, because that way you know that they probably know what they're talking about. Be like, hey, we want to have a forging scene in our movie. Can you come and make sure that it's actually legit? Like, that would not be that hard. But they never do that, apparently. I don't know why. Probably because 99% of the people out there would never know the difference anyway, so they don't care about the other 1%. I am looking at, like, as far as straightness, warps and curves and stuff, which you can't see, I'm sure, but I'm going to get it really close. There's going to be little, like, bumps and stuff on the surface, but I'm looking at a center line here, and that's got to be pretty dead on before I'm satisfied with that. But yeah, there's going to be undulations and stuff in the surface and along the edge that, but I'm not considering that part of the straightening. I'm considering that part of the surface finish really more than anything else, and the grinder is going to clean those up. But I need to be able to see a straight center line axis on the edge on both sides, and the both sides thing is really the big challenge here, because you hammer on one side and it's going to affect the opposite side in a different fashion. So I'm pretty good up to about here, and I need to be able to clean that up to where it is straight all the way out there. Wheel Power, how's it going? Yeah, it's all about the cinematic effect, nothing to do with accuracy and reality. Hey, I want my fantasy to be accurate to reality. My fantasy movies, come on, man. Is that too much to ask? I mean, yes, Lord of the Rings was a masterpiece for its day, for sure. I think it was. But then, of course, how much else are they getting incorrect? Like, I've never been in a battle with a sword and armor and stuff, so that could be wildly inaccurate too. I don't know. But they always seem to hire like martial arts experts of various sorts for movies to train the actors and choreograph fights and stuff. Why can't they hire a blacksmith for a couple hours to be like, okay, you need to do this, and this has got to look like this, and whatever. I don't know. Just thinking out loud. Frankly, I don't even know if they make any good movies anymore anyway. Okay, I feel like we're painfully close to where I want this to be. Close enough to where I can deal with it post-normalizing after it's been annealed. That's pretty good, I think. You've got to look at it from both ends. Still drop hammer there. Yeah, see, that's... You can look at stuff from one angle, you flip it around to look at it from a different angle, and suddenly it's not what you thought it was. Especially on a it's a two-edged weapon, a double-edged weapon. That's pretty close though. All right, well I'm gonna check and see if this will fit in my kiln. I do not believe it will, but I need to know that right now, because if it doesn't, we're just gonna go ahead and start the heat treating process right now. Let me see. Oh, ooh, okay. Lucking out, guys. It does fit in the kiln. That's nice. I appreciate that. Well, that's good. I can heat treat this in the kiln. And I like that because, well, it's easier to get a quality heat treat when you can really control the temperature. But it's not even that as much, honestly, as it is a hold time. I honestly, I don't have a problem doing it in the forge, even with 80CRV2, because it's a learned skill, and having done it with really dialing that in this year with the stainless Sanmai with the 125 CR1 core. That is that's something I do in the forge, and it's pretty fun. And get that dialed in, it's good to go. But it is a bit of a skill. Armor is usually incorrect. Yeah, I can see that. Well, let me show you guys what we got here, since I just kind of pulled it out of off camera real fast to check that. But I am going to shut off the forge because I had an idea of something else I was going to forge, but it ain't going to be tonight because I need to go spend time with the family. But there we go. This is the forged Zulu spear. See that? The dimensions, the final dimensions, final forged dimensions, I should say, on this is 12 Here, hold on. I can't see what I'm doing here. 12 1/4 on the blade. And then the tang is 4 1/2, 4 5/8. And the width here at the base is 2 1/4. Thickness of the tang is 1/4 inch, and it's close to 1/4 inch down the center to about 1/3 of the way down, and then we've got some taper. It's a little bit, it's not, yeah, it's got some taper to it. So I believe we have the material here in the proper shape that we need, and we're going to be able to build this super cool spear. Oh, it's backwards. I'm trying to get this over here so you guys can see it against the white backdrop. There we go. Pretty cool. So yeah, this is going to go on about a 24-inch handle. So it's going to be very similar to like a short sword almost, or a sword. A short sword attached to a haft. Pretty cool. All right. Well, hey guys, I appreciate you coming along and hanging out for a couple hours while we forge that, and more to come, especially as the weather finally starts to cool down a little bit. It has been, I mean, it's been a hot summer. I don't know what else to say. That's the way it is here, and it's a little more difficult to get out here in the shop and heat things up when it's already 100 degrees outside, but you do it as necessary. Anyway, I'm looking forward to doing some more forging as it cools off some more. Thanks, Ransom. Anyway, guys, I appreciate all of y'all. 52 degrees there. That's a good temperature for forging outside in. Faux show. All right, guys. Well, you guys have a good weekend. Thanks for coming along. I appreciate it, and we'll build some more stuff in the future. We'll keep plugging away. So, take care. Thanks.